Greetings, fellow tarot travelers, tripping through the tetrahedral triptych of cards I shall lay before you. I'm Tarot Torch. And our attention now is being drawn back to the Philippines. With more than 2 years in office, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is one of the world's worst human rights abusers internationally. But he supports an 82% approval rating in the Philippines. His war on drugs has left over 5,000 dead bodies, according to Philippine authorities, with human rights groups claiming the numbers are much higher, between 12,000 and 20,000 dead, many of which were wrapped in plastic-type saran wrap, executed, and then left wrapped in plastic, in many cases left suffocating with gunshot wounds that did not kill the victim on the public street gutters to sow fear in the hearts of the neighborhoods. The chairman of the Philippine Commission on Human Rights said the toll could be as high as 27,000 dead, though he emphasized that the investigating the deaths was complex because police withhold records on anti-drug operations. These killings were carried out without any due process, and these are state-sponsored extrajudicial executions and not the work of vigilantes. According to the government statistics, there were also 164,265 arrests of drug personalities, as part of 115,435 anti-drug operations across the country during the 2.5-year period. Citizens claim that many of the victims had no drug history and that drugs were planted on them so they could justify another execution. It is not surprising that crime is a major problem in the Philippines, given its high level of poverty, under-resourced and corruption-prone law enforcement agencies, and an extremely slow judiciary. Criminal activities in the form of smuggling, illegal gambling, drugs, human trafficking, and money laundering are significant features of the Philippine political economy. Studies by International Alert suggests that the illicit economy in Mindanao plays an important role in sustaining the multiple conflicts across the island. Under Duterte, progress on the political and security front have been mixed. This is in large measure due to the May 2017 occupation of Marawi City in Lanao del Sur province by Islamist extremists affiliated with the self-proclaimed Islamic State. It took 5 months of combat operations for the Philippine military to regain control over the extensively damaged city. In response to the Marawi crisis, Duterte imposed island-wide martial law, which remains in effect. The rehabilitation of the city is expected to cost more than $1 billion. The most significant accomplishment pertaining to Mindanao was the passage of the Bangsamoro organic law known as BOL in July 2018. The BOL translates into law many of the provisions included in the 2014 peace agreement between the Aquino government and the MILF. Under the BOL, a new political entity, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, would replace the current autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. The BOL is an important step forward, but multiple challenges remain, including possible objections to its constitutionality. For more information on this topic of the BOL, please watch the Tarot Torch video, Philippines 1. For decades, economists wonder why the Philippines was doing so badly compared with its neighbors. Inflation hit 6.7% in September 2018, close to its highest rate in a decade, and far above the central bank's target of 2.4%. The stock market has lost over a fifth of its value since its January 2018 peak. And though growth remains impressive by international standards, 6.1% in the third quarter compared with a year earlier, it is a three-year low. Key features of the Duterte government approach to the economy include running a large deficit, adopting a more statistic approach to infrastructure development, and continuing increases in social spending. 33.4% of Filipino children suffer from chronic malnutrition or growth stunting. Malnutrition is a serious issue in the slums of Metro Manila and across the Philippines. Undernourishment is endemic and increasing throughout most of this archipelago in some 7,100 islands and is compounded by the prevalence of intestinal parasites and gastrointestinal diseases, which health workers estimate deprive youngsters of at least 5 to 10% of the nutritional value in food they consume. This problem is particularly prevalent in rural villages and city slums where many people eat with their fingers. According to the Philippine Ministry of Health, nearly one-half of all reported deaths are among infants and children through age 4, and about one-half of the accelerated death rate among those age 5 and younger is related to malnutrition, compounded by diarrhea, measles, and malaria, which is returning to areas where it once was almost eradicated. More than 29,000 children are dying annually due to the high prevalence of undernutrition in the country, a UNICEF study has stated. This is about 38% of all deaths among Filipino children under 5. The Philippines loses approximately US dollars 4.5 billion or Filipino pesos 220 billion per year due to the effects of undernutrition such as child stunting, anemia, and iodine deficiency. This is equivalent to 1.5% of the Philippine GDP in 2015. Stunting alone contributes to more than 50% of the economic costs of undernutrition. Stunting occurs very early in life or in the first 1,000 days from conception to 2 years due to the lack of nutritious food. It not only results in children being too short for their age, but can also result in damage to the brain capacity. Is Duterte's anti-drug policy helping the Philippine nation with its basic problems of poverty, Islamist terrorism, and malnutrition, or is it just adding more suffering to a region heaped with despair? Do right-wing despots solve basic social, economic, or political problems, or do they just add to the problems? Will the Philippines be a better place because of Duterte? Will the state-sponsored extrajudicial street executions by the thousands in the Philippines, the return of once eradicated diseases due to poor education and poor hygiene, the ongoing battles between Islamist, communist, Catholics, and fascist interests, and an unaddressed economy that is floundering, help the Philippine nation with foreign investment? Will the Philippines solve their problems, or will they continue to elect dictators that add to their misery? Well, these are some very, very big questions, and they are questions for which we have no current answer. And when there are questions for which we have no answers, it's a good time to then ask the tarot cards. They may not have the answers we want, but they certainly will lend insight and tell us an interesting story about the events we are addressing. The cards for today that I've chosen are called the Fournier Naipe Poker Español. And this is a deck of 52 cards, and so it is easy to read as a tarot reader. And the Naipe Baraja type cards, which these are the cards that are used in the Philippines, as well as Central South America, and they originate from Spain. Remember, Spain at one time did conquer the Philippines, and some of the cultural relics, like the use of the Baraja cards, are still present there in the Philippines. You can also see it in the language with occasional Spanish words chirping about. So we shuffle the cards to show that this is an honest show. And we cut the cards to let everybody know we want the right cards on top. And then we push the cards off to the side where we can still view them to maximize our working area. So the first card in today's reading is the Ten of Coins. Now, I think it's ironic to see the Ten of Coins here because the Ten of Coins talks of great money, intergenerational wealth, wealth so profound no one can spend it in their lifetime. And so they pass it on to future generations. The second card is the Ace of Swords. And the Eight of Swords represents protecting something that is precious. It represents preciousness that is protected, that is defended, like the royal gems, or like a family member. I think I said Ace of Swords earlier. I meant Eight of Swords. I hope you did catch that. And the last card is the Four of Swords. And the Four of Swords represents restriction. And so we have here abundant wealth that is being protected, and the outcome is restriction. And I want you to notice that it goes from 10 to 8 to 4. That descending number pattern means things are getting worse, not better. When it ascends, things are getting better. It's an optimistic reading. When it descends, it means they haven't yet reached the bottom of the barrel, but it may be near at hand. And so what I think we have here is this abundant wealth of the treasury of the Philippines. If you remember the Marcoses, oh my gosh, do you remember Imelda Marcos's shoe collection? I mean, these people spent the entire treasury of the Philippines. To this day, it's why they are still impoverished. And Duterte is in charge of what's left of the Philippine money. And this money is vast. The people, the middle class and the upper class in the Philippines, and they do exist, these people contribute greatly. And they keep a functioning a budget through paying of taxes. And the Philippines has a great deal of money at its disposal. And it is protecting something. It's protecting, when it goes to war on drugs, you're protecting sobriety. But there are other ways to protect sobriety than by killing up to 27,000 people, leaving them in saran wrap in the gutter on a street. I mean, really. There's something very wrong with this whole discourse and how it has been formatted. And so the outcome of this is restrictions. I think what we're going to find out is that the thing that's being protected is a value system that is disinclusive of others. It's an elitist system. If you went to college, if you have lots of money, you support sobriety. And then you go out and kill the poor people who have drugs. Well, I hate to tell you this, but that's not a very compassionate view for a Catholic nation. In truth, the very wealthy need to protect something far more important than their false bourgeois values. What really needs to be protected are civil liberties and human rights and the health and well-being of the people. Really, they should be healing the people, not persecuting them. Drugs are victimless crimes that are based on addiction. These people need medical care, not execution. And execution has never stopped drugs from occurring. And then we have the Four of Swords, which is restriction. I think what's going to end up happening from Duterte's role in government is the Philippines are going to start restricting the powers of the president. They can't let a madman take office and just go on a murder spree. Something has to be done. Look, the Philippines has enough money and it has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. These are both air signs. These are intellectual signs. But you can't misapply your intellect and misapply your money. What has to occur is that we need to have restrictions on people like Duterte. What do we do when a madman takes office and is democratically elected because everybody liked his hair or liked his commercials? This is happening not just in the Philippines. There are problems in Brazil, and some would argue even in America. So what are we going to do? And here comes the idea of restriction. What we really need to do is to restrict public office so that it serves the people, it represents the people, it keeps the peace, and it keeps money invested in the most precious thing worth protecting, which is life. And unless government is guided, it's going to be misguided. And we need to understand that the role of government is to keep the peace, to keep health standards high, to keep education free, and to get along with neighboring nations to create trade. It is not government's business to go around persecuting, arresting, and executing people because of some intellectual criteria.